Hey, what's up, guys? I made this, stuck this contraption together a few years ago, and I was gonna make a video of it then, but while I was making the video, I almost burned the woods down, so y'all never got to see that one. But anyway, after I did that, I just kind of left it and didn't do much with it, and then I got it out the other day. And it had been sitting up for years, and wasn't running, so I went all through it, and it turns out the jet in the end of it, of the pilot, was clogged up, so I got it working again, and it's pretty cool. These are check valves for 1 pound propane cylinders, and then I've got a shut-off valve right here and a regulator right here. And it's like a roofer's torch or whatever, but this one's particularly hot. And the one with looks like a what you call it, like the muzzle on it, that's actually the pilot light, and you get your big flame out of the one with the bend in it. All right, so with something like this, it's going to go through a lot of 1 pound cylinders. So, and you can, run it off of 1, 2, or 3 cylinders because there's check valves in there. So years ago, I started researching on how to refill these things, and I'll show you guys what I came up with. You see, if you've ever tried to do this before or have done it before, you'll see these straight adapters that lead it out to where you have your propane bottle like that, and then you fill it up that way. Now, when you do it that way, you're supposed to cool this off in the freezer, and then I might say have this upside down. It would work a whole lot better if it was upside down. But still, I don't think you're really going to get a full fill on this 1 pound canister. And when I was researching this, I saw a lot of people, they were worried about getting these too full. Which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, because that valve right there is a bleed-off valve. So even if you did fill this up, it would only fill to here, provided that you're filling it up that way, and that the end of the valve is somewhere around in there. And that gives you room for expansion of the gas. And even if it does expand too much, this is going to actuate, provided that it's working properly, and vent some of the gas. So I'm not saying do this, because there's some laws about doing it. I think there's even a federal law, if you do it, you're not supposed to transport these. And I can see why, because, if you filled it all the way up and you got it in a hot car, it could vent some of that gas out, and you could wind up with a potential hazard there. So, as a disclaimer, this is for instructional purposes only. If you do this and hurt yourself, I'm not going to be held responsible. All right, with that being said, I'll get into it. These pressure relief valves, these cylinders quite often fail here because they're really not meant to be refilled. It's kind of a safety thing. And if you try to take one of those out with like a valve stem tool, I believe they install these from the inside out and then put the cylinder together, because you can't really see any threads right there. So I haven't had one of these apart, but I imagine that's how they put them together, just to keep you from tampering with that valve. And they do make, I'll show it to you a little bit later on in this video, brass caps with a rubber seal that you can put on here, which is a good thing to have, because sometimes this will start to leak. Just another measure to have. But you don't want to do this with, real rusty, bad looking cylinders. Alright, now I bought several parts in a bulk buy off of eBay, and it was, propane fittings and whatnot. And here's what I came up with as far as filling these. Now, yes, that is a balloon filler on the end of that. So if I was feeling, really spunky, I could fill up some balloons with propane, but I just basically stuck that in there because I didn't have a plug for that end. So we're going to mount this on that, and I'll show you how I do it. Real quick before I fill this cylinder, I wanted to tell you something that I like to do on these. I clean this out before I do this. That way you don't get any dirt that falls back in there and will get in that seal when you let it go for that valve. And the way I do that is I squirt a little bit of WD-40 in there, let it sit for 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll take just a shop compressor, and then I'll go ahead and blow that out, and then I'll put some spray silicone in there, and then I'll work that valve up and down and kind of turn it with a pair of needle nose pliers, and that just helps the longevity of the valve and to help lubricate it. And you can only do this when this is completely empty, because if you try pulling up on that valve, you're obviously going to get propane. Okay, so now we've got our bottle hooked up, and I'd also like to mention that before you screw this on, it's not a bad idea to just go ahead and spray a little silicone spray in the top of your tank there, in the valve. That'll just keep things, because you can actually unscrew the little nipple that goes down inside that, and you don't really want that thing unscrewing and then pulling off your bottle and then having propane fly everywhere. So just make sure all your seals are nice and lubricated. And alright, so I didn't chill this bottle, but if you do chill the bottle, you will get more in it initially, but we're not really worried about that. I've got the main valve on, so I'm just going to cut this one on. And we'll just fill it nice and slow. Faster you fill it, the more this heats up and the less it takes. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here and just wait for that to stop hissing, and I'll be right back. Well, while we wait on that to keep filling up and stop hissing, I just wanted to talk a little bit about lubricating all that stuff with silicone. The reason I use silicone is it's not because I'm worried about it combusting, like if I was filling up a paintball bottle or anything like that. By the way, if you do fill up your own paintball bottles, don't ever use any kind of a petroleum-derived lubricant on any of your seals that are under pressure, because of the risk of combustion. But in working with high pressure a lot, basically, I found that silicone is just a lot better on the rubber seals than any petroleum derivative lubricant. Now it's stopped hissing, so that means no more liquid fuel is going down into it. And for this next part, you really should be wearing gloves, because what we're going to do is we're going to reach in here, and eye protection for that matter, and grab a hold of the valve stem and pull up on it. Now I just felt this, and it feels like it's about halfway full. We probably could have gotten a little more in there if we would have put this in the freezer for about 10 minutes, but we didn't. So what I do is don't pull up on this thing very hard. It doesn't take much, because if you do pull up on it really hard, you could get it off center and damage it. So you just want to vent some of that gas, and then you'll hear the tank bubbling and hissing. And so you just do that, pull up on it, and then you'll hear more fuel go down in there, and just wait, and then that'll all settle, and then just do it again. I can't really hear what's going on because my air unit just kicked on. But you just repeat this process, and it's easier if you put your ear up to it. Now, if you were to really tug on this, that gas would just come flying out of there, and it'll actually be boiling in here when it's not under the right pressure. So if you got this at a rolling boil, it'll come, out of there even when it's not full. That's why you don't want to pull on that. That's another reason you don't want to pull on that valve too hard. And I was filling some up yesterday, getting back into this, and I noticed if I pulled too hard on it, it would kind of get out of the valve seat, and then I'd have to kind of wiggle it around and push it down to get it back in. But I'm going to go ahead and continue this process and not bore you with the having to sit through the entire thing. But once I get close, or actually once I get it full, I'll show you what it does when it fills up. Okay, I think we're getting pretty close, and the reason you want to have gloves on, if you don't already know, that as this gas depressurizes, it gets really cold, and you could freeze or burn your hand. So now the liquid level is all the way to the bottom of this valve, and this is done. So we're just gonna shut this down. When you first put your first pressure in there, if this part's leaking, what you want to do is shut your pressure off, and then if you can't get it to stop leaking by wiggling it and kind of pressing on it lightly, you might as well just throw that cylinder away. Alright, now we're going to take this off and see if it's leaking up here. Okay, got that shut off. And that joker is full. So I will show you my yard torch when it gets dark. Well, it's just about dark, and here is the cylinder that we just filled up, and here are the other two. And this is the brass caps, one of the ones that I use when I'm just storing these. And as you can see, I keep them in good shape until one of the valves fail, basically. Alright, let's fire this thing up. And again, there are check valves in here, so it can be run off of 1, 2, or 3 cylinders. Now, because the output can be so high on this, the more cylinders you have hooked up, the slower these cool off and depressurize. So I usually just run it with 3 cylinders. So let's open this valve. Got that one all the way open. And when I'm running this, I like to run it on 30 pounds. So we just get it up to 30, and you can hear the pilot light hissing. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this down, and when it gets a little bit darker, I'm going to show you guys what it looks like at night. For the hard to reach tiki